What's going on there, jerk faces? It's your boy, Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's a conversation you could be having during the day, but having at night. We're back for another week um, with, to take your mind off the craziness, but really quickly, we're gonna be talking about something, not that pleasant, but we both think it's very important to discuss.
It's going to start really shitty, but it's going to get consistently better throughout the.
Right, exactly. Not to mention our usual movie review and the review for uh, uh, the current docuseries that we're watching, Lost Speedways, and maybe a part of the live stream that we do going forward. We don't know yet. We're just trying things out, but kind of in the same vein of as that as that interview from that Confederate soldier. We'll be discussing another interview from another, not necessarily historical figure, but someone who's lived through history.
Yeah. Well, it may be not a permanent segment on Nocturnal Transmissions, but for the foreseeable future, we'll have like a little bit of this type of thing too. And quite a fascinating interview it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very. Yeah, I was very intrigued. It was very random. It just appeared on my YouTube feed one night, and when we did the interview with we discussed the interview of Julius Howe, the former Confederate soldier. We had posited, it would have been really nice to have spoken to an actual Confederate soldier, and like the next best thing was this interview. But then another one would have it would have been really nice to again, same kind of concept where it would have been nice to talk to someone who like actually lived through slavery. And lo and behold, this interview popped up, and I think it was part of the same project as the Julius Howe interview.
Yeah, I think so.
It was like during the Depression, and President Roosevelt, through labor, the job creation, acts that he enacted, sent out people to just interview and like record, using the latest technology at the time to actually record these people and their stories, and I think they're available through the Library of Congress.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely very interesting, and I think there's probably a lot of people who would not want to listen to what this guy has to say either.
Mm-hmm. Right, because I mean, they might think like, oh, it's too painful. I don't want to hear, this guy's story, but it's important. Honest, though, I think we've lost something and I mean, we as in society or humanity in general have lost, the oral history part of ourselves. Like back in the day, clans would like sit around the fire, and like the elders would go on and tell like stories, and then those stories would then pass down, to the children, and so on and so on and so forth. And it's like for like 500, 1,000 generations down the line, they're all hearing the same story. And I think we lost some of that. But thank God someone had the foresight to go and talk to these people and get their words on the record, so that that we could benefit from them.
Yeah, So yeah, this will be fun, kind of discussing this interview as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, all that in your in your favorite couple of hours of listening, and
So,
yeah, I hope and I hope we provide some sort of relief from the day and its stresses.
all right. Well, should we get started? You want to should we dive right into the pile of bat crap?
Yeah, let's get the we're gonna get the unpleasant stuff out of the way. Well, there's only one thing, and that is the recent controversy surrounding Netflix and the movie that they're distributing called Cuties. It's
No, is
been
it a series
described. It's
or a
been
movie?
what was it?
Is it a series or is it a movie?
No, it's a movie. And
Okay.
again, it's not Netflix didn't like produce it. They're just like distribute. It's kind of like um, it's kind of like like the theater system where like the theater didn't pay money for the creation of this, but they're just
They're
presenting it.
allowing it in their platform.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like there's supposed to be this coming of age uh, movie with this girl who's going against you know her family's traditions and some like supposedly backwards culture to to oh, guys like I don't want to say the words because it's so to realize her sexuality at 11.
Oh, it.
I just like yeah I want to try I want to try and perform for you guys. I really do, but just like saying those words is just it's like it might as well be vomit.
Now, my question is now: is it actual 11-year-olds that are the
Yes,
actors?
yes, actual
No,
11-year-olds.
it's not people just portraying 11-year-olds.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would understand if there was like a 23-year-old who who looked young enough to portray a 17-year-old. That's understandable. That's reasonable.
That happens all the time.
It happens all the times. I mean, a la Dawson's Creek and whatever like the CW has been pumping out recently,
Yeah.
or since forever. But this is literally 11-year-olds, doing these very sexualized dances, like touching themselves, in what's been described in the movies as these girls, like one of like the girls like takes a picture of her genitalia and sends it to someone.
What?
Yeah. Again,
Oh,
I haven't watched it. These are just reports from other, I don't know, more braver individuals than I. And
God.
there are like the supposed honest reviews who people watch it and they're like, oh, what are you talking about? It's fine. And just like
I'm so. I'm
I know
sorry.
I should have
I,
grabbed the beer. I should
I have to drown out the horror.
I know I should have grabbed the beer.
God, that's
Um,
fucking gross.
yeah, and I mean on the like when it initially dropped on Netflix, um, the whole everyone was like up in arms because I don't think any of like there wasn't any. I don't know if there was a trailer, but people were upset about the poster that they put out, and it's the
I did
four
see that. It's
it's the
horrifying.
four yeah it's the four main actresses or characters in this movie, and they're wearing booty shorts and crop tops, you know, uh, posed in very sexually suggestive ways, and initially Netflix tried to do damage control and was like, oh, we're sorry for the image that we use. This the we we apologize for the image that we used. The image does not, represent, everything that this movie is. That was like that was their damage control. Uh, that was their spin. That was their spin maneuver to try to uh, mitigate the damage, or kind of salvage this thing that they probably spent a good amount of money to get the rights to have on the platform. Um, and and as soon as I saw that poster, I was like, oh god, this is child porn.
It is. Oh, 100%.
And, even though there was, even though Netflix was trying to reassure people, like, no, we promise, this is just bad taste, this is our bad. We just picked, we picked the wrong image. And again, not that I'm standing for Netflix, because they are the devil, but the in France, when they released the image, it was a less provocative image, less provocative poster. It was just the four main girls, just standing together. That was it. And so, and then people were saying like, oh no, this movie is great. It won an award at Sundance. But then if you look into Sundance, the co-founder of Sundance is charged for the third time for basically sex crimes against a minor.
Yeah, and it's like, well, and isn't that where what's his face, Roman Polanski ran off to? Isn't he France?
Or something. I thought he went back
Yeah,
to Poland.
maybe that was where it was. I thought he was in France, but like, yeah, it's
Maybe, yeah.
the fact that this movie even it's one thing that like Netflix is allowing it on their platform, which is pretty awful to begin with. But the fact that not only did someone think that this was a good idea to make, then someone else was like, yeah, I think that is a good idea to make. Let's fund it. And then it got created. It's like, because it's, movies aren't made by one person. This movie was not made by one person. So a bunch of people thought that, like, yeah, we can make this, child porn film, which is, that's what it is. And people think I'm crazy when I say that pedophiles and child pornography is it's the next part of the alphabet soup of the LGBTQ A+ community. That's gonna be the next part of it. They're gonna allow these people, and
No,
it's like
it already is. They're like people like
in
there's
5 years
there.
time,
No, no,
we will
no.
be
It's
big.
no, no, not even 5 years now. Because there's already people like on Twitter just openly letting their pedophile flag fly.
Yeah,
They're
and
like
but the fact
they're connecting pedophilia to LGBT stuff, like trying to get under that umbrella.
yeah,
There's
and
like there was this one person who openly declared himself a MAP, which if you're not familiar of what that anagram is, or acronym is minors attracted person. Yeah, I know. There's already an acronym. And this person proudly declares it and says like, oh, this is my LGBT like whatever identity. It's only natural. It's like, no, it's not. You're fucked in the head, and I have a one pill solution for that.
it's called the silver bullet.
Yeah, it's called sometimes made of lead. Sometimes with a brass jacket.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's already here. It's already here. Like the whole like a couple years ago with that TED Talk with that lady, standing for pedophiles.
Oh yeah, we talked
on
that.
TED Talk.
And yeah, it's really fucked up.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. And you think that this would be the one issue that we could all like rally behind, but there are people defending this movie. I mean, fucking Tessa Thompson, that chick from like Thor and Westworld and that original like race bait, like white, white hate movie, Dear White People. Tessa Thompson, that like kind of like the up and coming
Yeah.
it girl. Like she came out in defense of this movie.
God.
Yeah, and she's like, God, I hope Marvel cuts ties with her like yesterday.
Yeah.
Because yeah, she was Valkyrie in the Thor movies, and in Endgame, she was made king of Asgard because Thor abdicated the throne.
Yeah.
But now Tessa Thompson, the actress, like she's out here defending basically child pornography.
No, she
So
won't lose her position because like I said, it's becoming normalized. What's his face? That was the Guardians of the Galaxy director. Like he's
yeah,
pretty
James
much.
Gunn.
Yeah, I mean he lost his job for all of like 2 seconds.
Right. Yeah, and then he got hired for Warner Brothers to do the second Suicide Squad movie. But
Yeah.
then after that, like after like kind of like the initial dust settled, Disney went right back and was like, yeah, you're back. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, it was just we're sorry. We didn't mean to fire you. We like you.
Yeah, it was like yeah, those tweets were like 10 years ago. They were just jokes. Come on.
Yeah, it's just Andy, it disgusts me, man. I don't want to live in a it's kind of like the idea of I don't know if you've read the story of Brave New World
No,
uh, by Aldous Huxley.
I'm
Well,
I'm
essentially,
familiar with the story, but I haven't read it.
mainly like you have this futuristic dystopian society
Mm-hmm.
where everything that we think as being morally deranged and corrupt is celebrated as like virtuous. And and you have a character by the name of John Savage who grew up in a it's an exiled society, but a society that is more like ours. Like the things that we hold up as having strong family values, religion, all this stuff. That's what's virtuous.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see stuff like this, and I see this stuff being normalized, I feel like this like fish out of water where I cannot live in a world where this is normal. This to me is just something that I am horrified by. And
Right.
listen,
I mean,
I can
yeah.
forgive.
It's already seeped into It's already being normalized. I mean, just recently, there was that proposition or Senate bill, yes, SB 45 or something, where it's like
Mhm.
now like if you gauge and if you engage in sex with someone who's like 10 years younger than you, and I think the cutoff is at 14. So if you're a 24-year-old and you engage in sodomy, basically that's what it is. It's like it's trying to lessen the penalty for sodomy. It's trying to do away with sodomy laws.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like yeah. So a 24-year-old sleeps with a 14-year-old, then they don't automatically have to go on the sex offenders registry. They're
Jeez.
gonna leave it. They're gonna leave it to it's gonna be left to the judge's discretion. But it begs the question: what the hell? Like, can a 14-year-old consent?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Can a 14-year-old consent? If they are considered a minor, then and if they needed permission to go on a fucking field trip, what makes you think that they can consent to a sexual relationship?
Yeah.
And like the justification for it was that, oh well, if a man was to engage in a sexual relationship with a minor, it was like basically like if it was like basically because like, oh well, if he was a heterosexual, he would he would the decision to be whether or not that guy had to be put on the sex offenders registration would be left up to the judge. And instead of elevating that crime, they brought it down. So instead of saying, okay, even if you're heterosexual, if you're a man and you engage in a sexual relationship with a minor, then you automatically get onto the sex offenders list. But instead they dropped the sodomy, the the sodomy law.
Yeah, and listen, the the whole like pedophilia thing, it's, say we will about the people that are in prison. There's a lot of horrible monsters in prison. Those monsters fucking hate pedophiles.
No, yeah, because I'd have no problem killing a pedophile in front of everybody and going to prison. Do you know why? Because they already know what I'm about. I'd be a fucking hero in prison.
Yeah.
Because one of the big things is because a lot of those guys that kind of that get into like that cycle of criminality is because a lot of them, they were themselves molested.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd drop a pedophile. I'd drop a pedophile and I'd happily go to jail.
Yeah, 100%. It's just it is. I can forgive a multitude of sins. That is one where it's like, to me, there's just the only cure for that is death.
Right? No, I mean it says in the Bible. It's like when Jesus, he's hanging out with his homies and like the children are trying to get close to him, and the disciples rebuke them, and Jesus like, no, bring him over here. He says, if ever that whoever misleads this child, they should have a millstone put around their neck and throw him to the ocean.
Yep.
Dude, that what is he talking about?
Yeah.
It's not just he's not just talking about indoctrination or false teachings. He's talking about sexual degeneracy. He's talking about pedophilia.
Yeah.
So yeah, like.
And yeah, the fact I just, it disgusts me. It pains me to have to talk about this stuff, but if we, when is it so egregious like this, where it's like so in your face, and we do nothing and just kind of let it happen, we're just as culpable.
Right. I mean, but should, again, like kind of like how I think I mentioned last stream, where we have to stop, being shocked at awful people doing awful things. And I mean, in terms of awful people, I'm talking about the left. And so when the left is defending this movie, I'm not saying Democrats, I'm saying the left.
Yeah.
And like I'm talking people like who drunk the leftist Kool-Aid, because can someone be a Democrat and be a good person? Yes. Can that Democrat person be good right now? Debatable. Especially if you march lockstep with every issue that the Democrats are for today. But it's like, should we be surprised that there are people of the left persuasion defending this movie? No, we should not be surprised. I mean, these are the people that say it's okay to murder a baby up until the point that it's born,
or after,
or after fucking Governor Blackface
Blackface
McKlansman. Yeah, Blackface McKlansman. So it's like, should we really be surprised that there are people like on the left? There was an article, I forget, like in the New York Times or New Yorker or something, but it's like, It's like, have you even seen the movie? Have you even seen the movie's Cuties? You should try it. There might be a lot of things you might like. That was literally the title of an article.
Yeah, and I was telling you before the stream started, is like, listen, I've watched a lot of gratuitous material. I mean, just talking about like watching RoboCop, watching Alex Murphy get his whole fucking body blown to bits,
Mm-hmm.
or
Dude,
some of the shit
okay,
watching
we are
like
two.
Saving Private Ryan.
Listen, we are two professing Christians,
Yeah.
and we reviewed freaking Wild Things.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the most awesome movies I've seen.
Right? Yeah. Okay. We are two professing Christians, and we reviewed Wild Things.
Yeah.
Okay. And then and as Christians, we understand more than anybody that everyone has dirt on them. Okay. We're no like all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
I'm not gonna say I didn't enjoy that pool scene.
That's what or that motel scene.
Oh. Yeah.
All right. Okay. That is different. That is different than having 11-year-olds go out and perform these highly sexualized dance moves.
Yeah. That's
And it's another thing and you know how many girls they auditioned?
God. I don't want to think about it. It's probably like definitely more than 4.
Definitely more than 4. They auditioned 650 girls.
650? God, I was gonna say like maybe 100.
No, 650 girls, and you know that they recorded them.
That's
like in like the whole audition process. You know that they recorded them. It's like so they could show like other people, other executives or what supposedly other executives like, oh, what do you think about this girl? What do you think about this girl? Like 11-year-olds.
And you know that the kids that got that, something horrible happened to them.
Oh, no doubt.
And the ones
it's not
that
even a
didn't
question.
also had something horrible happen to them in hopes that they too would be in the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
and the fact that they're
it's like, and it's like the defense of this movie is, oh, this is supposed to be a satire. This is supposed to be shedding light on like the over sexualization of young girls in our society. It's like there are other ways to do it. You could make a documentary. Okay, you could do a critique on like the whole like toddlers and tiaras thing. You know, it's like making a movie about drug addiction and then making all the actors become addicted to meth.
Yeah, I remember that toddlers and tiaras crap. Like I remember there was a friend of mine, his fiance at the time. She would constantly watch that. It's like, you gotta shut that shit off. Like that, I can't watch this. This is absolutely like disgusting. And the fact I can't like listen. I'm no prude. I'm nothing. Like trust me. I watch a lot of gratuitous material that I probably shouldn't watch, but I do anyways. But that is just you're putting evil in yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Again, I'm someone who watched Full Metal Jacket when I was like 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I watched Total Recall. I watched Total Recall, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall, back when I was like 9, or
Yep.
or even younger than that when I was like 7. But yeah. So I'm not saying that I'm pure. I'm not saying that I'm this holier than thou individual.
I'm not saying like stick only to like the Kirk Cameron Christian films.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying that I only watch VeggieTales.
Yeah.
But this is different. This is completely different. It was a meme I saw just before we started. where it's like, it was like from the Babylon Bee, where there's like, oh, I'm gonna make a movie about not murdering puppies, but but in the movie we're gonna be murdering puppies.
Yeah.
It's like I understand, like, if let's for the sake of argument, let's give the benefit of the doubt to the director or maker of this movie and say, like, that was their only intent, to shine a light, to do a critique of the over sexualization of young girls in our society.
Sure it was.
Sure. Okay, let's for the sake of sure it was. You failed at it. Okay?
Miserably.
You failed at it. All right. If it reminds me of back in my art school days when we used to have critiques, and people would explain what their work was trying to do, and then what they presented was a completely disconnect. And you just be like, you failed.
Sure, it might be softcore, but it's child pornography.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like to this movie maker, you failed. All right. If you let's giving you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that you were actually trying to make a statement or a point about the over-sexualization of girls in our society, but you try to go the Thanos route. You try to use sexualization of girls to point out the sexualization of girls. It doesn't work. And for those of you not aware, it's like, in Endgame, Thanos, in the earlier part of the movie, he destroys the stones, and he says, "I use the stones to destroy the stones." Yeah. Like, you can't use the sexualization of girls to point out how bad the sexualization of girls is.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You failed. You utterly, completely failed.
Well, I'm done commenting.
Yeah, me too. Again, we've achieved catharsis. God. Anyways, let's move on from this unpleasantness and get to the next bit of the next part, next thing on the agenda, and that is the interview of a former slave by the name of Fountain Hughes.
What an amazing interview it was. Let me tell you.
Yeah, and again, I've linked. I planned ahead and I linked the interview that that we watched in the description. So after this, you can go and watch it and see how amazing it is.
Yeah, it's like a short 30-minute interview, and when I first started listening to it, he was talking a lot about like people, and because you have to remember this is also in the 30s, so it's the Great Depression, and he's talking a lot about like people with their money and debts, and how the smart thing to do is to never indebt yourself. So, and I thought, wow, this is not exactly what I expected to hear from a former slave. You figure it's like, well, the first question would be like, well, what's it like being a slave? That doesn't actually happen until way later in the interview. He goes on like for
towards the end. Yeah, towards the middle of the interview, he starts getting into like, oh, how bad slavery is, and kind of like the mindset of people, who were slaves, and even he expresses his own, what's the word for it? I guess his own desire never to be a part of that system again, to the point where it's
right.
Like, if all of a sudden they decide that they're going to be slaves again, he and a bunch of people would just ended their lives.
Right.
So again, we're not. What was that?
Understandably so.
Right. So yeah, we're not yeah, again, let's not get it twisted. We're not mitigating slavery. We're not saying, oh, it wasn't as bad. We're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. But
No, no,
what was more interesting though was the beginning of this interview, where I think it's just they were just in the begin they were just starting off the interview, and I guess they're trying to they're doing some rapport building,
kind
and
of like what we
found
do
it
with kind of the behind the scenes with like our Circle of Jerks podcast. So it's a
right,
lot of
right, right,
we
right.
want to have the talk before the talk kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's
And
very interesting that he starts off with, or like kind of like the behind the scenes stuff. It's he's talking about how to basically keep people out of slavery. Because I think because being as someone who was born into slavery, I'm pretty sure he's able to identify it fairly easily.
yeah. Well, like I said, I just thought it was very because he's talking a lot about like money and debts and like staying out of debt. Don't get in debt to begin with. And I was like, well, this is kind of like it's like I wasn't sure where he was going with it initially, and then it became like I don't know I don't have a lot of money. I don't have much to my name. I don't have a lot of money, but I owe no man even 5 cents. It's and I owe nothing to anybody, and I'm not in servitude or in slavery to any man because all of my debts, there are no debts.
Right.
I pay
Even back then, he was talking about credit, where he was like
right,
saying how people were like, oh, buying things before that they could, pay for them. Being on credit. And he was like advising. He was like saying he was just like kind of expounding on it and just like saying like, yeah, people should just save up and then buy stuff.
right, and I think this is kind of like interesting. What I think this is very applicable to today as well because we talk a lot about how we have a Democrat Party that is wanting to eliminate in their own way. They want to say they're quote unquote eliminating debt, but they're trying to create indentured servitude towards the federal government, um, and how so much of not only the black community, but like obviously that if we are talking about slavery, the since the '60s and the creation of the Great Society and all these kind of the war on poverty
Mm-hmm.
um, bills and whatnot that have come through, the black community has been essentially enslaved yet again, through uh, this need for money from the federal government and this reliance on federal welfare and other stipends that they receive,
Mm-hmm.
and that money isn't free. It comes at a cost, and it comes at a cost to freedom.
Right. I mean, because what is it? Dinesh D'Souza. He had a really good analogy of the whole kind of the dichotomy between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans, especially and he particularly talked about it in the through the lens of like a newly arrived immigrant. Um, but what the Republicans will do is like they'll drop you down a ladder. If they're like they're immigrants start off at the bottom level, and then people who have been here like Republicans and things like that start up at a higher level. What the Republicans will do will drop you down a ladder, and you just climb up.
Yeah,
But what the Democrats do is they'll throw you down a rope, and they'll say just hold on to the rope, and we'll just pull you along. So okay, so you grab the rope, you hold on, and they lift you up, so you're no longer on your feet, but you're not making any upward
any
mobility.
headway.
You just
Right.
stay wherever they lead you, and they just kind of like pull you along. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what welfare does. it gives you enough money to live, but not enough money to, do what you really want, like go on vacation or, uh, you know, or save away, for a rainy day or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, you're constantly in reliance to someone else, and uh, it's slavery in a lot of ways.
Right, but it's like, but the insidious thing about modern times, like with welfare and things like that, is that they don't force you to put on the chains. You put on the chains yourselves. So they,
Right.
they say, they don't. It's not as though they come, they bust into your house and it's like, here, take this money and shove it down your throat.
Well, and what
It's
they're
just
saying
more
is
like here's some money, take it. It's right here. I'm not, you can have it, just take it. And so, it's, consent is the prison. Because once you take that money, you're slapping on the chains yourself.
right, and what's really evil about it is not only are they're saying the thing that's going to help get you, you know, independence and where you the things that are good, that are going to help you to grow and become, wealthy and prosperous, those are considered evil. But you take our chains and our rope and you put that on your, and that's what's good. This is the compassionate thing. And yeah, it's evil. And it's not only just that. We were also talking a little bit about how, we about college and how we are throwing, 17, 18, and 19-year-olds into hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt that they'll never pay off.
Right. It's yeah, because if you don't know anything about like economics, um, scarcity. What makes something valuable is scarcity. All right, and this, like, particularly in like the late, like, when me and Robert were coming up, like there was this huge push for everyone to, go to college, get a bachelor's degree. Um, but what they did was it well what they did was they essentially made the bachelor's degree worthless.
Oh yeah,
Because if everyone has one, how does that make you special? Because before, a bachelor's degree actually meant something, and it proved, like, it not only proved that you can follow directions and that you completed a course, but, like, it really meant like you were, a master of whatever discipline that you particularly studied.
right.
And so, but now, like, now, back in like the early 2000s, they were basically equating the bachelor's degree to a high school diploma. That's like the bare minimum.
Yeah,
And then they try to get you again with like the whole idea of like going to get your master's or your PhD or your doctorate. Just more debt.
yeah, and a lot of times, like outside of like maybe a few professions, like, yeah, or a few degrees, you ain't making that money back. They're just like, unless like you hit the lottery or some you God rains down money on you like there's no tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
or
gonna
yeah, or
be.
you had like some really rich uncle that you never knew about, but then he somehow, but for some reason he really liked you, so he left you his entire fortune.
Yeah, he
That's
Bruce
that
Willis
that'd be that'd be the only way, you
he
know.
Bruce Willis you, like, yeah, uh, yeah, it's just it's kind of sad. And the thing is, the other thing I was telling you before we started, it's not just like, it's the bare minimum, but like the peer pressure is so great. Like, what? You're going to college? What are you, a loser? And like the idea that you would go anywhere else but before your university is just like you're laughed at almost. Like you're a loser, dude. You're not going to make anything of your life, and the reality is just that is so not true. Um, there's so many, going to a trade school or community college or the military or anything.
Or even just trying to start your own business is
Yeah,
way more valuable than going to school, getting into debt, coming out with practically a worthless piece of paper and becoming a barista at Starbucks.
yeah.
That's why. That's why whenever I talk to young people, it's like I always ask them, "What do you want to do for the rest of your life?" Not and I know that that's kind of a misleading question, but it's like, yeah, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And they say, I don't know. Like, then don't go to college.
Don't take your master's of lesbian dance theory and just work at you know at Starbucks.
Doing latte art. Yeah, doing latte art.
Yeah,
But yeah, like I seriously, when I talk to like high school kids, I always ask them, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I understand like nobody does one thing for the rest. It's not the time for that is over. There's no one that there's no longer like the company man that gets a job and works at it for like 20 years and then he retires and gets a gold watch. There's no such thing as that anymore. But
yeah.
it's a question. It's a question designed to make someone like evaluate what they what their priorities are.
But when you have like no, you're not even sure like what you even like want to like what you're interested in, what you want to study, uh, like where you just have like I'm not even sure what I'm interested in. Like it's just yeah, don't spend $100,000 you don't have studying something you're not even sure what you want to do. Like if you're gonna go to college, God, go to a community college. Spend like a fraction of what you're
Yeah,
gonna pay at
like
some big name
yeah,
school.
for a fifth of the price. For a fifth of the price, you can get just as good of an education. You can get, just what you need, just like the bare minimum. And you
Yeah,
could, and then you could still, you could still like you could still hustle on the side. You could, I mean, I don't know if you still are allowed to, but you could, go to community college, get your associate's degree, and then, do Uber, at night or, work on your, work on your woodcraft, that you like to do, or, or whatever, and start doing it, and start an Etsy shop,
right.
or just do anything, especially, especially, yeah, because if you're not wanting to become a doctor, a lawyer, some kind of engineer, then don't go to college.
Yeah, just a yeah. So like I said, I found that the talk about him being like I mean that was interesting too. The whole idea of not indebting yourself to anyone, like the idea like he was so like there was so much joy in the idea. It's like no man can come to me and say I owe them even a nickel because I owe nothing to nobody. I
Hmm.
am free. I am completely 100% free. I don't have much. I don't live a glorious lifestyle, but damn, I'm free. And that was so much more important to him than having a luxurious lifestyle.
Right. Yeah, because again, it's like one of those things that we get drilled into our heads. Um, that like having kids is too expensive. So yeah, like put off having kids. You know, if you do it the stupid way, then yeah, kids are expensive. But kids don't need much.
Nah,
I mean, like the most expensive thing is maybe diapers, but they're create. You can do cloth diapers. Yes, you'll have to. You'll spend time. Having to do like more laundry or whatever.
yeah.
But you won't waste money on disposable diapers.
I think about like our childhoods. Like honestly, like for me, yeah, my mom and my dad didn't really have a lot. Sure, we had a house we lived in. That's great, but I didn't have like a zillion toys or anything like that. Like, my thing is like, I think one of my biggest expenses as a kid, my parents read at an early age, and yeah, I bought books. That was one thing I always wanted. Like, mom, can we go to the bookstore? I want to get more books, and that was it. Like, I mean, I had a great imagination.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like, I didn't understand that we were like, not rich until I was old, like at least until junior high.
Yeah,
Because admittedly, my parents did spoil me a little bit because I was the only boy, and I was really the youngest because me and my older sister are like 9 years apart. Um, so I will, I can admit that I was spoiled. But even when my parents said no to me when I asked for a toy, and I cried, and I kind of had I had my little tantrum, and then I got over it.
yeah,
You know.
but yeah, it's just
It's just like
yeah,
there's this thing that that's been drilled into our head, like how we're supposed to live our lives, or how we're supposed to be parents, or how we're there's no such thing. There are no rules.
yeah.
I mean, it's just like like what did people do before disposable diapers? Well, they had cloth diapers. Yeah, they had to do more laundry, but that's okay because like most women didn't work back then, so that that they could have the time to uh, put into doing washing diapers and things like that.
Yeah, similar to the Confederate soldier interview. I think say similar. No one's gonna want to listen to what Fountain Hughes has to say. An actual person that was in slavery. His whole family was in
Right?
slavery.
His like great 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 grandfather was like a slave, like owned by Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
I mean, allegedly.
and yeah, and it's there's all this talk. We've had all these looting and all this stuff in honor of George Floyd and all these police brutality suspects. It's like
Yeah, YouTube's really after us tonight.
his it has nothing to do with you know George Floyd or any of that stuff, and they're gonna listen to a guy who was an actual slave who showed no animosity towards anybody, um, lived a long, prosperous life, and
Yeah, well,
had
because
a
I
lot of
looked him up, and he like wait, was it him or was it another slave?
well, he lived he was that interview. He was like 103 when he did the interview,
Right, he was a centenarian. Um, yeah,
and
and but it's so crazy because like every so many people put like such stock in like where they're from and genealogy. It's like, and then some black people will say like, oh well, well, my family was stolen. My family was stolen from Africa. I have no history. And it's like, dude, this guy hangs his hat on the fact that his great great grandfather was owned by Thomas Jefferson.
yeah, it's like yeah,
That's part of your history now.
yeah,
Is it the best? Is it the best history? No,
no,
because your great great grandfather was a slave. Yes, that was horrible. But it's just like, but you come from your line comes from someone who was who was in service to who would eventually become the third president of the United States, the writer of the Declaration of Independence.
yeah, and yeah, I was just I was very fascinated by this, and I was when you sent that to me, I was like, this is I was really I thought this is a great idea. I really liked listening to what this guy had to say because, yeah, in reality, like, I think, anyone that was, obviously that, was slave, they've been long dead. But, the fact that, we did have the technology for at least for a time to be able to record what some of these, survivors of slavery, what their whole life was about, like what they thought about, how they lived, now that they're free, like what they think. It's I think it's very interesting.
Right, and just like there's perspective on it, it's like even though he said like I would sooner die, he basically said like, yeah, if we had to go back into slavery, I'd kill myself. And that's, and again, completely understandable reaction to
Yeah.
someone who's lived through slavery. But his, like, it's amazing, like, yeah, like you were saying, like the first words he was saying is like, never be enslaved to anybody. Never be in debt. That's, and that isn't in being in debt. That's the new slavery. You know.
A lot of people in slavery, let me tell you.
Yeah, a lot of people in slavery. And it's and I mean, and arguably this time it's almost voluntary. Because
Yeah.
and you might say like, oh, like, well, systemic racism, and I'm oppressed because I'm black, and yada yada yada. It's like, what about what about this guy? This guy actually lived through slavery.
Yeah, this guy was actually oppressed. He was
This guy, he literally was not considered a person but property.
Sure, maybe
he actually lived under systemic racism.
Yeah, sure. Like, and there was that, and maybe like that the person that's saying that, yeah, maybe your your father or your grandfather was part of was involved in the Jim Crow laws and was part of the civil rights movement, where there was some repression there, yeah, no doubt. You, however, where have you been oppressed? What law is standing in front of your way that is keeping you from achieving anything? What? Who stands in your way? No one.
I know, exactly. It's again, it's kind of like the Ben Shapiro thing. Like, point it out to me. I'll fight him with you.
Yeah. Trust me, like,
do you think that I am for systematic oppression? Do you think I am for racism?
Right. It's ridiculous. It's like where there's people.
Did we lose Rob? Are you still there, Rob?
There's always crazy individuals like that, but that doesn't mean that it's a in the DNA of the country. It doesn't. That's not the truth anymore.
Right. It's kind of like what Owen Benjamin used to say. I don't know if he still says it or still believes this, but perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah, it really is.
And that's what kind of what all these riotings and protests are about, is because they want 100% like they want 100% perfect response from police. When you really think about it, that's what they want. They want like 100% perfect response from police. They never want the police to use their weapons. They want it to like be fucking Shaolin masters that that can do like crouching tiger, hidden dragon flips and disarm a suspect, and just put them in like in the perfect arm bar and whatever, and not use their weapons. That's what they're asking for. They're asking for perfection.
Yeah.
But but again, because we're flawed, because we are fallen beings, we can never have perfection. And perfection is the enemy of good. If you're seeking perfection, then you are not allowing good to happen. Because you will never see good as good enough.
Yeah.
Damn, that's some profound ass shit, and I just came up with that off the on the fly right now.
I know. I think that's a good way to end the segment, man. I can't think of anything better to say.
Yeah. I'm pretty surprised at myself.
Yeah.
That literally just formed in my head right now.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we'll do like honestly, I kind of like this little segment here. I think we'll try to find like more interesting interviews with interesting people like this.
Yeah, yeah, you subscribe to that channel that
Yeah, I did. I did.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, when I linked it, I left the window open. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely peruse their catalog. See who
Yeah,
else do they have. Yeah, I wonder if they have. I wonder if they have like a recording of a Chinaman that built the railroads. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting too, and maybe I don't know if they have any of the people that the Japanese or Asians that were interred during World War II. That'd be an interesting
Oh
interview.
wow, yeah, yeah, that'd be amazing. Or maybe even I'm sure they will have it, but like interviews from the all like either all like Japanese or all Asian army regiment that fought in World War II. Like they were the most decorated in the entire U.S. Army.
That would be interesting to hear from them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because again, like I mean, not to compare, but like here's another situation where a group of people were uh, oppressed or had their liberties usurped, and yet they still fought for the country that was oppressing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they went to and they also served with distinction and were one of the most decorated units or regiments in the army.
Yeah, so I mean, we got a lot of a little bit digging to do, but I think if we can find like interviews with these people, I think that would be really fascinating.
Yeah,
I was just really happy, honestly, like finding that interview with that Confederate soldier. That was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All from watching, sparked from watching Birth of a Nation, baby.
I know, right? The only good thing the Ku Klux Klan ever did.
Yeah. Like I said, if you love if you want the Ku Klux Klan to be the hero, this is your movie.
Birth of a Nation is the movie for you. But if it is if that is your cup of tea, then stay the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep this thing moving on. Let's get into the review of episode 3 of Lost Speedways.
What an episode! So episode 3 of Lost Speedways is discussing a racetrack called New Asheville Speedway, and this particular racetrack there was a famous racetrack way back, from right around like the beginning of NASCAR, which was Asheville Weaverville Speedway, which was essentially they raced on the warning track of a baseball field. Funny thing, they actually used to race at Soldier Field too for a short time.
Is that right?
Yeah, but anyway, so once baseball returned to that particular field, there was some baseball team that returned to that field, in the late 50s, and so they needed to create a new racetrack, which was New Asheville Speedway. Started out as a dirt track and was later paved. But it was a very, very, very popular racetrack. Good little short track, and some of the guys that they interviewed were part of these real great short track racers. NASCAR fans will know the name Robert Presley and his dad Bob Presley. Robert Presley was a NASCAR Cup driver for many, many years. Also raced in the what's now the Xfinity Series, was the Busch Series at the time. And some of the rivalries, the big rivalry was between the Presleys and another driver that was he's not also in the Hall of Fame. Jack Ingram, who's a former, kind of an Xfinity series great. He was one of the original, big champions of the Xfinity series, nicknamed the Iron Man. And what's interesting about this racetrack is that there was a lot of different types of fans that would show up, and it was a raucous crowd. You had all these, people from different counties, and you had your drunks over in another corner, and it was just good fun at this racetrack. And yeah, this racetrack was actually was around for a long time. It wasn't until I think I forget when the last race was. I think it was like 99 or something like that is what from what I remember from the episode. And yeah, it wasn't because under normal circumstances a lot of these racetracks kind of disappear, because maybe there's funding that falls through, or low fan attendance, and people kind of don't like the racetrack anymore for some reason. Not the case with New Asheville Speedway. But what were some of your thoughts on the episode, Andy? Like, what did you take away from it?
For me, I thought this was a lot more hopeful of an episode, or there wasn't like this sense of forlornness, if that's even a word. Because the first two racetracks, they were like completely abandoned. They were they went pretty much derelict. There wasn't any upkeep. And like the kind of environment was slowly like taking reasserting itself. But it's
They were kind of left in an arrested decay of what they used to be.
right. It's like they were allowed to be derelict. So that's so the surrounding like fauna started growing in, like the track started to become split because of weeds growing through and things like that. But it's only in this was it New Asheville?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was only in this New Asheville where they where I think because the track didn't shut down until fairly recently, that that they were able to then kind of repurpose the area, and they turned it into kind of like a community park with with a walking track and a bicycle track, and so I think it was one of the more, this was again not hopeful, but
it
maybe
wasn't
more.
completely lost.
It wasn't like it wasn't hard to get. It was still accessible. It was repurposed as a community space. So it's not as sad to to be there.
Yeah, it was like this. The skeleton is there. It's the body of it is different in a way.
Right. The bones are still there, but the muscle is a little different. And I thought although and I thought like the track itself was pretty interesting, and being that it was a shorter track, and how this one didn't really have straightaways.
No, yeah,
which made it made you have to be more on the ball, and being paid and forcing you to pay attention, because there weren't spots in the track where you could just kind of like rest a bit, but you always had to like be on that wheel because
Yeah, and there was a lot of guys where it's like if you weren't in shape, you would fall out of the seat. I mean, you're constantly on the wheel, and the G forces are are kind of like pulling your neck, and I had Richard Petty talking about, it's like, yeah, there's so many times like during the race, it's only 200 laps, but you get worn out, and it's like you'd have to push your head back straight, just to, otherwise you'd fuck up your neck. And I don't know what it is about this particular racetrack, but there were so many rivalries and fights, and
Yes.
which for the fans, this is what makes the racetrack so much fun. Is the fans love this stuff. The rivalries, the fights,
Hmm.
the animosity. There's parts of the crowd that like they're pulling for this driver. The other part of the crowd is like they're pulling for this driver. And if you're pulling for this driver over in the wrong part of the stands, you're gonna get booted over to the other side pretty soon.
Right.
It's like even like they were talking about a story about back from like the '60s. A really famous driver slash commentator for the series, Ned Jarrett, was known as Gentleman Ned Jarrett, and not and Richard Petty, the king of NASCAR, not guys that don't get in fight. Honestly, they do not get in fights. They
Hmm.
fought, at this racetrack. That's how bad you know, this racetrack was. It just brought out something visceral in a lot of people, and the big story that they were kind of trying to find out was there was an incident between um, Jack Ingram, who's another NASCAR Hall of Famer, who he ran head on. He got so frustrated. He ran head on into another driver, and they ended up. He ended up getting arrested and thrown out of the track. There was a whole scuffle with the police that ensued, and it's just I don't know, something about that racetrack brought out a lot of passion in the drivers and in the fans, and um, the fact that the racetrack went away, um, it was kind of like kind of a dirty thing. What happened? It was nothing that the racetrack that did wrong, but some people with a lot of sway and a lot of power kind of forced them out of business in a way, and
Right. Yeah, I believe the story was like, a new hotel was being built, and they didn't
yeah,
want, yeah, and they didn't want like the roar from the track to kind of like noise pollution. But yeah, it was
yeah,
kind of a dirty, it was kind of dirty deal, kind of underhanded, where they didn't even try to work it out, you know, uh, to only have the races, in a specific time, kind of institute quiet hours, or have the cars, put mufflers on, on their exhausts.
yeah, and it's kind of like I mean, one of the historians that was kind of sharing about the racetrack too, is like even he was like kind of choked up a little bit because he was like, it's just that racetrack meant so much to so many people. But what you said, there was a lot of hope because Robert Presley, who was that was a race where he made his name,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, you know what, like, yeah, the racetrack it's not what it was, it's not the same thing, but you know what, it's not lost, it's right here. We
Mm-hmm.
I it's and it's been put to good use. It wasn't just completely demolished. It was repurposed, and we can always come back here and relive the memories. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, yeah, that was kind of like a good like little message of hope.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was definitely a fun little episode. Learning about New Asheville Speedway, and honestly, like you know, I love NASCAR history. And I'm learning so much more about the sport and some of the older tracks on the circuit and some of these old racetracks. I'm learning a lot, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's I love it. But yeah,
Wait, say that
I'm
again.
liking
You
this.
the connection was
Oh,
going
I
out.
cut out a little bit. I know what I was saying is that even as a NASCAR fan who I know the history of the sport so well, even I'm learning a lot from these episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me as a complete, NASCAR non-fan, uh, but as someone who enjoys history, it's really fun hearing these stories and kind of getting the behind the scenes stuff of this particular sport.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad I'm glad you're enjoying it, Andy. It makes me happy. One of these days, I'll get you to watch a race.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath, but hey, anything's possible.
All right, well,
Yeah,
should we?
I think there's more of a chance of your wife watching a silent movie than me watching a actual NASCAR race.
How about this? If I get her to watch The Artist, you have to watch a race.
Okay, but I have to be there. I have to be there.
Okay. That'll work. All right.
Or no, maybe you should. Okay. Or maybe you have to get her to watch it. Just you two. Because if I'm there, for sure she's gonna watch it.
Okay, so that's the deal. Virtual handshake.
All right, virtual handshake. All right, and I want pictures.
Oh yeah, of course there's pictures.
I want pictures.
Or better yet, I'll have her talk to you about the movie.
Oh yeah, like a book report. All right. Well, that's a nice. That's as good of a segue as any. But yeah, that was our review for Lost Speedways episode 3. Again, we're gonna hold off for the review of the entire series until we watch the last episode. There's 10 episodes, so we're
8. There's 8 episodes.
Oh, there's 8 episodes. Oh, so we're like pretty much halfway through.
Yeah, we're getting there.
So next week we'll be officially halfway through.
Speaking of silent films.
Yeah, speaking of silent films, let's get into the review of tonight's movie, which again falls in line with this month's theme of silent movies. And tonight we'll be reviewing The Phantom of the Opera from 1925. And some of you might not know that that there actually was a Phantom of the Opera movie from 1925, but there is, and it is a silent movie.
Yeah, this film is kind of interesting in a sense. There was a lot of different versions of this film in particular, some of which do not exist anymore or exist only in part. Obviously, like later on, you get like there's the one from I think like 43, which is part of like kind of like the more of the talky Phantom of the Opera, Universal monster movies. Then you have the I think the most famous version of Phantom of the Opera is the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical,
right?
Which is not this movie whatsoever. It's almost like a completely different story in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, I've seen both. Well, I've seen like the movie version of the Andrew Lloyd Webber show, and watching this, it's more or less the same story. It's just Andrew Lloyd Webber as a musical.
True. I it is and it isn't the same story. There are a lot of differences. I guess maybe I see more of the differences than the similarities.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah, but I think this version is actually really really fascinating, and I'm hoping that we watch the same version of of this movie because there are, like you said, like there's this is a free domain movie now, so
right.
You can
the copyright or like the trademark is up. So
yeah, and there's a couple of different versions on YouTube. The version I watched is almost 2 hours. That was on another app, movie app. And so I'm hoping we watch the same one. But even reading the description, there's a couple, from like IMDb and Wikipedia and some other sites, like even they have like the way that the plot is presented, because they kind of do it like act by act, but the order is completely jumbled up from like what I watched. So I'm like, okay, this is. So I'm hoping we watch the same version.
All right.
Why don't you give the synopsis?
Let's give the synopsis and we'll jump into it. All right. In this silent horror classic, aspiring young opera singer Christine, there's an accent on it. Dang it. Christine Day discovers that she has a mysterious admirer intent on helping her become a lead performer. This enigmatic masked presence is Eric, also known as the Phantom, a horribly disfigured recluse who lives underneath the Paris Opera House. When the Phantom takes Christine prisoner and demands her devotion and affection, her suitor, Vicmonte Raoul de... God, I hate French names. Vicomte Raoul de Chagny, whatever, sets out to rescue her. Damn French people.
I know.
Problem my French. But yeah. Although for me, if you've seen the Andrew Lloyd Webber, either the show or like the movie adaptation from like the early or mid 2000s, it's mostly the same story, with maybe like a few differences here and there. Like in this movie, as opposed to the Andrew Lloyd Webber version, where like the Phantom nightly puts Christine under like some sort of hypnotic spell. The 25 version doesn't have such a scene or an element to it.
Here's what I found. There's a couple things I found interesting with this one, because you have Christine, who's in a relationship with Raoul, and yet she is more enamored with her career and willing to do whatever it takes to kind of get ahead. And
yeah, feminist.
She's even willing to give up her her relationship for her career. And
like a feminist.
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways, kind of sells herself to this, creep. In a lot of ways, the Phantom of the Opera.
Interestingly, kind of a parallel. Like she willing to, her willing to, renounce any ties to her, her lover or whatever, in pursuit of, her career as a performer, is not unlike the Tale of Faust, which she does perform.
Yeah, very. That's actually, this is a very deep movie in a lot of ways.
It is. It's a very deep movie.
And to even like say like one of the title cards or one of the dialogue cards is saying like, yes master, I'll come. She even starts to call the Phantom of the Opera, later it revealed his name is Eric, is like calling him her master. And it's like, and she is drawn by his call. And I mean, obviously, as the movie progresses, she realizes her mistake, or maybe the fact, I don't know if it's because she's horrified by the grotesqueness of Eric, his disfigurement, which the version that I watched does not show, because there was supposed to be like a flashback scene as to how Eric became so disfigured, which is actually kind of horrific. What happened to him. But yeah, I don't know if it's because she was so horrified by his looks, or if it was just like she saw the evil that was in him and she realized her mistake and wanted to return back to Raul, who she knew was where her safety was.
Mm-hmm.
And but what's part of me doesn't think it's because of the evil, because she knew that he was willing to murder for her.
You're talking about the Phantom.
That's correct. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
but the the actress, she was like the that she was an understudy for was murdered by the Phantom of the Opera,
That's right.
and she still went to him. So I don't think it was because of like his evil acts, but I think she was more. I think it really was because of like his disfigurement that turned her off.
Right. Well, I mean, if you know that this guy is capable of murder, but you're still drawn to him, or like you still think that he's the way to go, then yeah, then if you're willing to overlook murder, then I think I think it was the looks.
Like I said, I think the redeeming factor is that she realizes her mistake and tries
Mm-hmm.
to correct it, and she's even willing to sacrifice herself in order. I'm willing. If you don't hurt Raul, I will stay with you.
Mm-hmm.
So she became a selfless character. She started out as very selfish, but
Mm-hmm.
became selfless towards the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's kind of like, wow, the fact that like she was even willing to go with this guy that was gonna like even murder for her to become, just to further her career.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be all that surprising because you have those women who become like infatuated with like serial killers,
True.
and they become like and like some women become pen pals, and like in the case of freaking even what's his face, Charlie Manson, like a woman married Charlie Manson.
God, yikes.
So it's I don't, it's one of those weird psychological things, with like
Yeah.
one of those weird interesting things about women. Uh,
Uh, yeah. So I think that was kind of an interesting part of the story. Um, what do you think about the Phantom himself? Like, what did you was there anything about like his character that you found interesting?
um, I don't know. For me, he turned out to be less of as a less of a relatable character than I first thought, or maybe it's because I had more experience with like uh, the Andrew Lloyd Webber version of the Phantom.
Yeah, see that's exactly what I was thinking, because this is where I think the huge difference is for me.
Right,
In the Andrew Lloyd Webber version, I kind of feel more for him because he's such a tragic figure.
right, because I think in the Andrew Lloyd Webber version, he was just born disfigured, which
Right,
again that might also I might be able to relate because being myself being born disfigured.
right.
But this version of the Phantom, he was someone, where he became disfigured because he was tortured, or like so basically, and so like his humanity was basically stolen from him.
Yeah. So here's where I think like maybe this.
But I think the only reason why he's not redeemable in my eye because he wasn't able to overcome that.
True, and here's where I think may have made him had they gone with this. So the rumor is that they were supposed to be a lengthy flashback to Persia, where Eric served as a conjurer and executioner in the court of the Depraved Sultana, using his lasso to strangle prisoners. And
Ah, okay.
falling from favor, Eric was condemned to be eaten alive by ants. And he was rescued by the Persian, the guy, the secret police guy, Ludo. He was supposed to be rescued by him, which is why like he kind of knew about who he was, but not before the ants had consumed his face, which is why he became disfigured. But
Ah,
the flashback was eliminated during different story conferences, either because of the budget or they didn't something changed. Like they didn't want to go with that. And I think had they had that in the story, it would have made the Phantom much more of a tragic figure. That he was kind of he wasn't a monster, but he was made into a monster in a lot of ways. And but
right, right,
we are
and that makes a lot. Yeah, that having that backstory would have also been helpful because this like secret police guy. Well, I don't know what version you saw, but the secret police guy kind of comes out of nowhere and like starts like dropping knowledge about the Phantom. It's like, well, how do you know? Like
well, and
when they
so
talk about like the strangler thing, it's like, well, like like, oh, raise your arm because the noose will come quickly.
right. Well, and then so initially we see this guy, very early in the film, and kind of like he's skulking around. He's kind of looks very mysterious, and a lot of people are scared of him because they think he's the Phantom, that he's the one that like is causing the mischief. And what he's doing is he's trying to find out where the Phantom is and figure out like how he works. Um, but what instead of this background, which would have given us more about the idea of the Phantom of the Opera and like hell, why he even showed up at the damn opera house.
Hmm.
It's we're given like this little note that he was someone that was criminally insane that had been imprisoned at this very specific French prison during the French Revolution,
Hmm.
and he had become kind of crazed and disfigured,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He became
which
deranged.
is, which is kind of like honestly in a lot of ways very unsatisfying to the
Hmm.
character. So
Right,
in a way he is a monster.
right. Yeah, and it makes him less and less like relatable or sympathetic.
So in a lot of ways, like Raoul is really the hero of the story. He's
Right,
trying to, kind of rescue the damsel in distress, despite the damsel not really even wanting him.
right. Yeah, or like because the damsel basically said like, no, I'm good. Because because the damsel herself is in pursuit of something else, something that she loves more than Raoul.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
You
this
know.
is the other thing that we had to talk about too is the obviously the makeup done. Lon Chaney is known as the man of 1,000 faces, and uh, I think when anyone thinks of there obviously Lon Chaney Jr. kind of took up that guise as well and
He took up the
became
mantle.
took up that mantle and kind of furthered his father's career in the makeup artistry of film. But
Hmm.
when you think of Lon Chaney, this is the role that I think of him in. I mean, he's been in a bunch of stuff, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and like, unfortunately, he only made one talking film. It was like the Unhinged 3 or something along those lines before he died of lung cancer. But this is probably his most famous role, and the 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 Phantom of the Opera makeup that he had on, is actually a very um, firmly held secret up until the film premiered. No one talked about like the how disfigured the Phantom of the Opera was. It was kind of
Hmm.
supposed to be a surprise, and uh, yeah, it's even to this day, it's like man, like he very like kind of scary looking.
Yeah, no. I think like I think Lon Chaney, like the Phantom, is I think pretty iconic. You know, when you think of kind of like ghouls and and just when you think of movie monsters, I think his is
One of the first ones you got to think of.
one of the first things that you think about. And I think my first exposure to Lon Chaney was I think even like Muppet Babies, because like Muppet Babies
Yeah,
they incorporate a lot of like old time movies and like clips and things like that. And I think like I think there was an episode where they kind of do like their own kind of take on the Phantom, or just like a Halloween special or something. And I think they did,
yeah, I remember that.
yeah, I think they do include a clip of Lon Chaney's Phantom.
That might be an interesting like cartoon to go back to because I do remember there being so many like pop culture references that I don't think I appreciated at the time,
Uh
but
huh.
I would definitely appreciate now.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it'd be a lot. It'd be kind of like for me, watching Simpsons as an adult, and it's like, and especially like the earlier episodes from like the early to mid '90s, and just
Yeah,
like the references, and just like when as after when I saw it as an adult, even though I was around at that time, I was still a very young child, and so like I was aware of the pop culture references, but I wasn't able to appreciate them until I became
right,
an
right.
adult. And so similarly, yeah, I'd want to go to revisit Muppet Babies just for the fact hitting all trying to see like all the different pop culture references.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this movie was really like it was tense. Like, I for you think of like, oh, it's a silent movie. How good can it really be? But like honestly, I was on the edge of my seat. Especially towards like that last act. And there's a lot of tension in the movie.
Yeah, no, this was a good movie. I think the only thing I'll ding it on is uh, the soundtrack. And specifically like just the music chosen to convey during different scenes, because I think there's some scenes where the music just didn't quite fit, like
You know,
when like the Phantom was talking about like, oh, I'm gonna kill all these people, but it was kind of a lighter, happier type of tune.
yeah,
It just kind of like took me out of like that scene where I should have felt like the dread and like the kind of the malice in the Phantom's heart for these for Raoul or for whoever. Uh, I think now that's the only thing that I'll ding it on this movie on it. It's that yeah, just like some of the song choices just didn't match up with the tone of like the scene.
so yeah, so that's also something that I 100% agree with you, and it also makes me question like how they decided upon soundtracks for like films back then because obviously
Right.
music did play a huge part. um and was there more of like was the music done separate from the actual movie and like they were just kind of like doing what they thought was best for the film because something that people might not know, the guy that did the soundtrack for Birth of a Nation did the soundtrack for this film, which is the music itself is actually very beautiful, it's very good,
Mm-hmm.
but you're right, it does not match up with the movie, which makes me think that like there must have been some sort of disconnect in a lot of ways,
Right.
or maybe that, or maybe
Because even for Birth of a Nation, some of the song choices were like spot on. Like the whole like
perfect.
when they like when the Klansmen start writing in, and like Flight of the Valkyrie starts to play, that's
Right.
appropriate, and but for this movie, I don't know, I don't know if it's because because this movie is so old that maybe someone went back in and filled it with like some other music without giving without thinking about the context of the scene, or or it's maybe they just whoever was the music editor at the time just kind of missed a step.
Well, and that's like I said, there were so many versions of this same film. Even like there was some versions that, like it towards the end of the 20s that actually had a little bit of sound, and they redid some scenes, and so it makes me wonder maybe what we're seeing, what we do have, might not necessarily be the product that was seen in 1925. Maybe the music was completely different, and we don't really know. So yeah, it's like it's the versions that we watched probably, yeah, it did the music did not match the scenes. Um, so yeah, it's just more of an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, overall, that's really my only criticism. And again, the criticism is only because this is what I saw. I never seen, like, if there is another version, I didn't see that version. I only saw this version, so I can only criticize or praise what I saw.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of those other versions are kind of they're not, they're either lost completely or lost in part. So unfortunately that's the problem with a lot of these old silent films is just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of there's a lot of speculation. There's really obviously no one's alive to talk about them anymore that were there, so we really don't know.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about the movie, Andy?
No, I mean, nothing in terms of metaphor or symbolism or anything like that.
Yeah.
Everything else would just kind of be technical, but again, this movie is nearly 100 years old, so it's like, can you really fault? Can you really fault it that much?
Honestly, like this, I think still holds up as one of the great masterpieces. Though this is a really good movie.
Agreed.
I mean, I'd be curious to check out the 43 version, which I haven't seen. But I heard it kind of bombed. Whereas this one was actually, at least the most viewed version of today is the one that was actually the huge success. So, yeah, this is a really good movie, and Phantom of the Opera is one of the I don't like musicals, but I do like Phantom of the Opera. And seeing this version, which is to me a lot different from the musical, I really liked it. I really liked it a lot.
All right. Well, yeah, let's give our ratings, and we'll call it a night.
Why don't you go first, Andy?
All right. For me, I'm gonna give this a 3.5.
I'm gonna be slightly above you. I'm gonna go 4, just
Okay.
because Lon Chaney, I think, is that makeup is awesome. I love the look of the Phantom. Uh, I love the story. I think I think it's definitely of the movies that we've kind of watched so far. I really like this story. Maybe I don't know. I like those old monster movies, and I like the story of this one. And the only, like you said, the only knock on it is the music. It doesn't.
Yeah, and that's like the only reason why I don't give this a 4. It's just
I would have given
so
it a 5.
if I'm gonna be fair, if I'm gonna be fair, then that's really my only complaint about the movie is the questionable music choice. And again, I can only, it might have been better in its original form, but this is the version that I saw, and I just didn't enjoy it, as
Right,
much,
and
or I wasn't able to overlook it. So that's the only reason why I don't give this a 4.
that, and the other thing that we also forget with some of these silent films is like the music that we're hearing may have not been the music that they heard back in the theater, because they actually had, someone playing the music.
Right, they had a
You know,
live orchestra. I mean, if the movie, like last week's movie, The Artist, is to be believed, when in the beginning of the film where they're playing George Valentine's movie, there was a live orchestra playing the soundtrack.
right, and that's the case. So like I said, we may not be getting the real music that was actually played. With Birth of a Nation, the actual music book of the soundtrack is still, it's still around, and so they were able to, I think, recreate that when they were remastering the film. But I don't think the same thing exists for Phantom of the Opera, because like I said, a lot of stuff has been lost. So when they
Right,
made this more readily available,
right, and I think, ironically, Birth of a Nation benefits in that it used a lot of really well-known classical music, like
yeah,
William Tell, right off
yeah.
the Flight of the Valkyries. I think that's one of the reasons why it was, in a weird way, again, not condoning the message, but just like one of the kind of the benefits of picking the music for Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, but yeah, this movie's awesome. Like, if you're wanting to get into a silent film, I can't say why you shouldn't watch this one. This one's really good, and it's like I said, it's free domain. You can find it pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Well, I watched it on this streaming app called Tubi.
Oh, same here. So we watched the same version then.
Okay, yeah, okay, great. Um, yeah, because I just figured, be seeing as how it's like, Tubi being a pretty legit site, I would assume that I got like the best form of that movie possible.
And that's what I was thinking. Like, I think we got the most, at least, because some of the YouTube ones are a little bit higher quality, but I think we got the fullest version of Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
some
so
of the
too.
scenes that were not included in some of the other ones, I think we got pretty much the entirety of the film.
Right, I agree. All right, well, that's our review for Phantom of the Opera 1925. Robert gives it a 4. I give it a 3.5. Uh, Still highly recommend this movie. Especially, if you want to get into, old time silent films, just so you can get like, that history, definitely would recommend this. And yeah, if you guys want, yeah, check it out on Tubi. Tubi, not sponsored, but hey, if you want to Tubi, if you want to throw us, cut us a check, we'll talk nice about you.
They got a lot of great movies on that website that are up for free. So
Yeah, so Tubi, maybe consider, sponsorship. I don't know. We'll, cut us a check. We'll talk nice about you.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, that'll do it for us tonight. I hope you're entertained. I hope maybe we brought something to your attention that you necessarily didn't think about, but now you'll start thinking about it, or maybe you'll be intrigued enough to go check out Phantom of the Opera, the silent version, or maybe or maybe we entice you enough with our review of Lost Speedways for you guys to check that out. But either way, I hope you're entertained. I was entertained. I always have fun. Did you have fun, Robert?
Oh, I always have fun. One thing that we also didn't talk about is the Phantom of the Opera set, which was beautiful. Even we were seeing it in black and white. That was the longest standing set that was built by Universal Studios. That was unfortunately, it was a travesty that it was torn down in 2014.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this was the So that was the set that was in this movie. It wasn't in the other
No.
Universal.
It was this version because they had some 1,000 some extras that they were using,
Mm-hmm.
and they built this like really gorgeous set that was the longest standing movie set from 20 a little bit before 25 up until 2014. So it stood for nearly 100 years, and they tore it down for nothing.
Well, that's sad.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not to end on a sour note, but like I
Yeah.
figured we might get
Yeah.
like
But
this
I hope again. I hope you guys are entertained. Don't forget we do this every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. ish. Don't forget to check out the library of other shows that we have. We have the Circular Jerks main podcast, of course, Nocturnal Transmissions, and Robert's gaming show, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts: Twitter @PodcastCOJ, Instagram @Circular Jerks Podcast, and Letterboxd. That's the movie review website where we put up movie reviews of movies that we reviewed here, but just in a slightly more condensed format. And with all that said, we'll thank you again, and let's do it again next week.
Alrighty.